In this lesson, we're going to learn about how we can actually read data from the file system. So far in our programs, we've used basic input from the user and we've sent output to the console, but we haven't actually read anything directly from the file system. So we're going to go ahead and do that. Let's create a test file here. I'm going to call this mytext.txt. We'll go ahead and fill it in with some text. This is a text file. This is what it says. Here is some more text. We'll go ahead and write that out, and we're going to create a simple little class and a program to read this file in. So I'm going to go ahead and create a new file called file contents.java. Public class file contents, and right now we have our class. So we're going to have to import something here. We're going to import java.io exception. And I/O exception is something that can occur anytime we're dealing with I/O, input, output. Basically, because disks and other means of storing things can be somewhat faulty, sometimes they're full, sometimes they have errors. We really want to be making sure that we are handling any problems and we're anticipating those problems. So I/O exception is something called a checked exception. Java has two different kinds of exceptions. We've already looked at illegal argument exceptions. We've looked at number format exceptions. Those are all unchecked exceptions. Those are exceptions that can happen at any time, but Java doesn't actually force you to look for them. Checked exceptions, on the other hand, your code will not compile unless you're actually handling those exceptions. So anytime we're dealing with any type of data, any type of class to read from the file system, we'll use I/O exceptions so that we know when errors occur. So let's go ahead and we will create a simple constructor, public file contents. We'll give it a name, string file name. So this will allow us to create some basic reader for the contents of some file. So we'll create a private string file name here. And in our constructor, we'll say this.filename is equal to file name. Now we have our file, and we're going to create just a simple method here to actually read in the contents of the file. So public void read contents. And in order to do that, let's create another private string here, private string file contents. Now what we're going to do to start off is we're going to say file contents is equal to an empty string. And from here, we actually are going to start using classes that are going to read in the file. So Java has a built-in class for reading files. We're going to import java.io.fileReader. And we're also going to import a class called java.io.bufferedReader. And that will allow us to read in a file line by line in a nice, simple, intuitive way. So in order to create our file reader, we will say file reader in is equal to new file reader. We're going to pass in this file name so it knows to read from that file on the system. And we'll show how that actually is going to work in just a moment. Now, in order to actually read line by line, we could actually use just the file reader, but if we want to read it in line by line, we can actually create a wrapper around this. So we will change this now. We will say buffered reader in is equal to new buffered reader, and then we're going to wrap that file reader right in that buffered reader, and this will allow us the opportunity to read line by line from this file. So let's go ahead, we'll create a line variable, and we'll use in.readLine. In.readLine is just going to read the first line of the file or whatever line is available. If the file does not have another line, line will be empty. So we'll use while line is not equal to null, line will be null, and that will allow us to read the file line by line. And while line is not equal to null, what we'll do is we'll set file contents plus equal line plus an n line character. So we'll use \n, and that will cause each line to be read in one by one, and then our file contents value will be read in, or we'll have the contents of the file. Then we will read in the next line. Line is equal to in.readLine. Now we've done all of this. One thing that we always want to do when we're dealing with input and output is close our resources. So we're going to use in.close, and since files and reading files can actually be pretty expensive for the computer relative to other things that we might do, we just want to close this right away so that we're freeing up those resources and other applications on our system can use them. So let's go ahead and compile. We're going to hit Control X. We'll say yes, we want to save this. Now we're going to get a compile error here. And that's because we have not handled these I/O exceptions. So file not found exception is a type of I/O exception. All of these are different I/O exceptions. So we'll go ahead back into our file and we will handle these. File contents.java. So let's go and we will wrap all of this with a try catch. And in this case, we will catch I/O exception. File not found exception is a type of I/O exception. So we can just catch I/O exception and handle everything. And here we'll go ahead and say system.out.println caught an I/O exception I/O exe print stack trace, just to tell the user what happened here, and we'll set file contents equal to nothing. So now we have our file contents object, we have our file name. We will go ahead and compile. If we haven't made any typos or other mistakes, we're good. So this gives us a simple application that we can use to read the file, but we can't do anything with it. So let's go ahead back into the file contents. And we're going to create a very simple public string get contents return file contents. So now we have the ability to read the contents. So we can actually insert a public static void main method right into our file contents object here. So we'll go ahead and we'll create public static void main string arguments. Now, one thing that we haven't talked about before is the string arguments in our programs. The string arguments is going to give us all of the command line arguments that we pass into this program. So just to show how that works, let's go ahead and we'll just say for int I is equal to 0, I is less than arguments dot length I plus plus system dot out dot println argument I is arguments I. So now if we compile our program and run it, nothing happens in that case. But if I say one argument, another thing, and x, y, z, you'll see here it's outputting the first value in that array is one argument, the first thing we're passing. Argument 1 is another thing, and argument 2 is x, y, z. So we can actually read in directly from the file system here. So let's go back into file contents.java, and we will, instead of doing this, we'll create a very, very simple set of instructions. We'll say file contents is equal to new file contents arguments I. And then we can say system.out.println contents.read content or get contents. Now if we do just this, what we'll end up with is just empty strings, because we just start here. Actually, we won't even end up with empty strings. We'll end up with a null because we haven't set the value of file contents yet. So what we're going to do is contents.read contents here. So now we have a simple program that will tell us the contents of other text files on the system. So let's write that. Let's exit. We'll compile our program. We will run file contents, and we'll pass in my text.txt. And you can see here's the contents of my file. And I can do that with other programs. I can actually even do that with file contents.java itself. And you can see it's going to show me the first file, and then it's going to show me the second file. So we can actually make this a little bit better. File contents.java. We'll go ahead and modify this so that before each file, we'll output some header information. System.out.println file name is, and we'll go ahead and say arguments I, system.out.println, and let's go ahead and just create a nice big line here so that we can see some separation. And now if we compile and run the same command here, you'll see we get this little bit of separation here that identifies what each one of our files is. So that should give you the basics of reading files and getting some data from the file system. Once you've read files into memory, you can manipulate the values. You can do all sorts of things in your program. You can split different lines apart. You can read data from the file system. You can parse it into integers. So all of these things give you the ability to interact with the file system and actually read in some data there. You can also write to the file system, which we'll cover in a future lesson. Thanks for watching today, and don't forget to practice your coding.